This is Work University, episode 21.
This is Work University, and I'm Annalisa Felix. This is where I talk to people from various employment backgrounds and get a better idea of what their job is really like. If you're just graduating or looking to change careers, you're in the right place. Now let's get to it. Hello, today I am here with Rosa, and Rosa is an assistant traffic engineer for the city of Santa Clarita in California. Hello, Rosa.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for taking time today. This is a really interesting topic. So as the assistant traffic engineer, what is your day-to-day?
Yeah, so my day-to-day is kind of similar to a regular office job in terms of we come in at 7:30, some a little later than others depending on your schedule. And then you start reading emails, checking to see what's come in for the day. As a traffic or assistant traffic engineer, a lot of the times we get calls from residents who have an issue with a traffic signal or some striping that may have gone wrong or it's fading, a sign that may be down. And so usually it consists of me checking my voicemails, checking any emails, if there were any emergencies overnight that may have occurred, and then making sure that they have either been resolved or that someone's working on resolving them, and if not, getting on it to resolve it. So a lot of it is just kind of seeing what had happened between the time of when I went home the night before and when I came into work that morning.
So are you on call, or is it your level of tickets that you get are the more lesser of the emergencies that you can be like a 9 to 5 type?
So I wouldn't say on call. We have a joke where we're kind of on call 24/7, but not really necessarily. It's more we have technicians in our section that are technically on call should there's an outage or there'd be a power outage or a signal goes out. We usually send out to either the technician or we have a contract with the County of Los Angeles, and they'll send out their technician to fix something that may need to be fixed overnight. Sometimes the issues aren't as great and they can wait to the morning, but mostly it's tickets. We have what we call the resident service center or a ticket request center in which residents can submit an issue or a request into the city. And so a lot of those come in for us, and that's usually what I'm checking when I say I'm checking my emails to see if something new has come in. Or, like I said, a lot of times you get phone calls as well. So depending on the severity of the issue, I'll go through and prioritize to see what needs to be addressed right away. Usually anything that impedes the flow of traffic during peak hour, which is where the street's volumes are the highest, will be addressed first. A perfect example would be if a signal is out on one of our major corridors and it's causing major delay for our morning commuters, then we would need to address that as soon as possible to get that flow of traffic back to its optimal service.
So if that ticket comes to you, a major corridor, light is out, say at 8 a.m., what do you do then?
So my first thing is to call our city technicians, signal technicians. So my first thing is to give them a call, let them know that there is a signal that is out, whether it be on flash or just not functioning properly. And then they will be deployed out to the intersection, wherever it is that they need to be, and then we'll adjust it, usually in the field. Sometimes, depending on what it is, sometimes it can be fixed in the office. We have an operation, we call a TOC, which is the Traffic Operating Center. And we have communications with all our signals in the city. So if possible, we'll try to do it in the office first. We'll kind of locate where it is. If it's a lost signal, which is something that's kind of similar to should you have a lost Wi-Fi connection from your phone to your router, the first thing you want to do is reset the router, reset the phone. So it's kind of what we were looking at in the operations center. I kind of be brief with that. Just to give an example, if it cannot be done in the office, in the operations center, then we'll deploy the technician out, and he'll go out to the actual location, and he'll open what we call the controller, which are these metal boxes that can usually be found at a corner or near the intersection of the signal. And then he'll go in there and do a hard reset, or he'll run a troubleshooting for the controller at the intersection, and usually he can get it back up once he gets to the intersection.
So are all of the intersection lights set up to work together, especially at those crazy times?
Yeah, so what we, during the peak hour, what we have in our city specifically is what we call coordination. Is corridor coordination, where the lights are coordinated, and they're coordinated during specific time of day. So our peak hours in the city are from 6:30 to 8:30 in the morning, which is usually the commuter traffic and the high school or elementaries or any other school traffic that may be happening within the city. And because we're in the city of San Clemente, we're not on a bridge system. We're kind of what looks like a full spaghetti. We don't have easy left and right. Usually in the valley, you miss a light, you can go down to the next one, make a left, and still get to your destination. Here, it's a little harder because we have these large corridors that don't really have that kind of left-right mentality. Be able to go to the next intersection, and you'll make a left or right, and then you're in a different part of town. So we have our corridors, which pretty much get you from the east to the west side of town, or vice versa. And those are heavily used in the morning by our commuters. So anybody who needs to get to LA for work in the morning will take that corridor, which means they get very congested. So in order to assist with that, we will coordinate our major corridors or major arterials to help flow them out of the city or into the city for the peak hour in the evening. So it's very much like kind of like your heart, right? So everyone's trying to get right. So the larger the artery, usually the larger arterial that holds the larger volumes of traffic.
So you said that that's done kind of administratively from your office. Is there anything that would take you out into the field?
Yeah. So sometimes we lose communication to the intersection, which is kind of what I was explaining before, which we have to go out and do a hard reset on the intersection. There's other things as well. So if I get a call that a sign is down, usually sometimes I need to go out there and verify what sign it is, what sign it used to be. Sometimes if I'm lucky enough, I can find it on Google Earth or Google Maps in Street View. If not, usually I have to go out there and see what the sign looks like. Does the sign even need to be replaced? Or if someone says the striping is off, the only way to really know what they're seeing is to drive it. So I have to go out there and actually drive the roadway or wherever it is that they say the issue is, so that I can actually see kind of what they're seeing from their perspective of what the issue is. Okay. A lot of the times we catch our issues that way by actually driving it after we get a call in.
Okay, so there's times when you take action from your desk, and then there's times when you go out on the field. So that's interesting that sometimes you're in and out, and that's like a city office or a government office.
Yeah, so it's a government agency. So we're in and out a lot because a lot of it involves us being out in the field and actually seeing something happen for us to be able to interpret it. So even in the private sector, a lot of times when they have to put together some plans for us, it does require them to go out to the field, to the site, to kind of look at what it is and survey and see what they're dealing with.
Okay. So how did you get to be an engineer? Because essentially that's the umbrella of your title, and we'll kind of work down from there. But did you always have an interest in traffic, or did you kind of start as an engineer major, or where did that interest come from?
Yeah, so first and foremost, the interest came from my dad, my father, who is also, he's a civil engineer for also a government agency, and he works with roadways, but roadways was not at all what I wanted to do within the engineering field. But I knew that I wanted to work in a field that would better the quality of life of, residents and just people on Earth. I just wanted to have a job that's going to make a difference in someone's everyday life. And the one way to do that is in engineering, and you get to also keep that creative side in terms of drafting and designing and putting together projects. So engineering was kind of what made sense for me. I get to be creative, and at the same time I get to better the world and increase the quality of life for everybody. Traffic was not what I wanted to do whatsoever. I was actually interested in geotechnical, so that's the study of dirt and the movement of dirt, which has to do a lot with like compaction, foundations, everything that goes under a structure or a lot of substructures. So that's kind of what interested me. And I came about traffic in an internship, actually. I just wanted a job. I just wanted to get experience while I was in school. And the city of Santa Clarita, which is where I live now, and I lived then, was the closest job that I can find with the best commute to school and to work and to home. And it just so happened to be in the traffic division. And I thought, I don't have any classes that I've taken, and it wouldn't hurt to learn something new. And then I ended up falling in love with it. So
okay,
that's kind of how that came about.
So what kind of schooling do you need to be to get? Was it an engineering degree? Was it your bachelor's?
Yeah.
So what do you need to? So do you have to get is it a 4-year bachelor's in engineering with a specialty in something technical, or does it really matter?
No, it doesn't matter. It's interesting. A lot of the universities are, once you get into engineering, it's most universities tie it to a 5-year program, not so much a 4-year program, just because of the complexity of all the classes. They become a lot more difficult the higher you go up in the curriculum. And so it's usually typically a 5-year program. A lot of people have made it in 4. I did it in 6, but that was because I was working and going to school at the same time. And I also changed my major a couple of times before that. But it's a 5-year program, and a lot of schools have different specialties. So the school that I went to, their professors specialize in structures, but there's different schools that specialize in will have different specialties, where I wouldn't say specialties, more emphasis. They have more of an emphasis in a certain section. But for the most part, the bachelor degree that you get is a civil engineering degree. And then from then on, if you want to go into your master's, then you can then go into what your specific field of preference is, whether it be geotechnical, transportation, roadway design, could be structures, hydraulics, hydrology. So there's a wide range, a big variety of subjects that you can go to and specialize in. But in terms of a degree, a bachelor's degree in civil engineering is usually what most people will get.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty broad as far as where you can go after that, because if you get in a master's, you're going to get specialized. But would you say that engineering is pretty broad to kind of choose which direction you want to go into?
Yes, yeah.
Now, is there any situation that came to mind where it's kind of like didn't see that coming, or that's kind of crazy, that maybe you didn't expect, or anything funky that happened?
We get a lot of there are definitely difficult ones that we've received. I would say a lot of times when they were kind of interesting like that is because the city of Santa Clarita is such an old town, a lot of roads were built, back in the 40s or even 1920s and 1940s. So sometimes something will be constructed that has been in for, 40 plus years, and we go out to see what the issue is, whether the roadway be too narrow or a curb is too high or too low or a driveway is too small. And a lot of times where we've seen that something was built so far back and isn't to current standards of what a new roadway should look like, a lot of the times those are the ones that get interesting because we need to abide by a certain manual. It's the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Devices. So this is what we call the MUTCD for short. And we have to abide by these standards. These standards are put in by the California. It's a code, and we have to follow it. And so sometimes those manuals get updated every, I want to say, 4 to 5 years. And when they get updated, we need to abide by the updated rules. What happens is we have roadways that are put in years ago, and we still need to abide by the rules. So that kind of makes it a little difficult when we go out into the field and see that a roadway's built so far back, and it becomes a little challenging to bring them up to standard without being cost efficient, without having to tear up the entire road and rebuild it right then and there. So I would say those are the ones that get interesting.
So when you say cost efficiency, does that mean you also have to deal with finance and budgeting in working on these projects?
Yes, yeah, we do. We are just like any other government agency. A lot of the time we are granted a certain amount of funds every year, every fiscal year, which is from July of one year to July of the next year or June of the next year. And we need to abide by that budget, and sometimes we don't have the money to do a large project, so we kind of have to prioritize and get a little creative, try to do our best to resolve the issue without going over budget. So it's not only engineering that we have to deal with, we also have to deal with the financial aspect of it all.
So do you have one big budget for all of the traffic titled projects, or is there like a budget for lights, and is there a budget for streets, and is there a budget for driveways and sidewalks? And I know that you deal with so many different details of traffic. Are those all in different buckets?
Yeah, yes and no. It depends. Sometimes the bucket may be a federally funded project or something where the state grants us money, or where LA Metro would grant money towards it. Kind of the best way to think of it is a scholarship. Kind of receive money from someone, and then we get to construct a project out of it. So we can ask for money from the state, from Metro, and then use those funds to build something. Or there's also a lot of it comes from taxes. So there's like the gas tax, the sales tax, and then that goes into a pot, kind of a large pot, and then we kind of divide up to see who gets what. It could go towards traffic, it could go towards sidewalks, like you said, streets. So it really kind of depends.
Now, we're going to wrap up here soon, but I wanted to ask you real quick. Is Metro buses and any kind of trains or railways, does that fall under you as well?
Yes and no. So the city of Santa Clarita has their transit or their transportation, which we also call transit, which is our city of Santa Clarita buses. So that wouldn't really fall under my jurisdiction in terms of an assistant traffic engineer. That's more of the transit specialists who deal with kind of the bus schedules and what the routes are. The railroad or railway system is still under the Southern California Railroad Association or the Metrolink. And so we don't really touch anything within their right-of-way, which is usually along the track.
Okay. All right. My last question is, what advice would you give to a student in college that, say, maybe wanted to become an engineer and maybe move more towards traffic in that direction? What would you tell that student?
Yeah, I would say in engineering in general, and especially in traffic, a lot of it is experience. So an internship is highly, highly, highly beneficial. And just being able to see what you see in class get applied out in the real world. You know, we sit and kind of crank out all these problems, but you don't actually get to see them put in place. So I think one of the advices I always give all of our interns at the city is just get as much experience as you can and ask questions and even if it comes to working for somebody for free, I know a lot of people who work at the city started working for free for someone. So, or a lot of my engineering colleagues or professors even started working for free just to get the experience. So it's one thing to learn, but the true learning happens when you get to actually apply what you've learned in the classroom to a real life situation.
Okay. Good stuff, Rosa. Thank you so much for your time and the information. And hopefully it'll help somebody that does want to get into engineering. And so I know this would be very helpful. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. I hope you liked this episode. If you have a particular job you'd like me to look into, send me an email at workuniversityforyou@gmail.com. That's workuniversity, the number 4, the letter U, @gmail.com.